The London streets were buzzing with excitement on that crisp Saturday afternoon in October. Red jerseys flooded the sidewalks as Arsenal fans made their way through the city, still singing and chanting from their incredible 3-1 victory over their biggest rivals, Tottenham Hotspur. The North London derby had ended just 2 hours ago, and the atmosphere was electric. Among the celebrating crowd was Billy Thompson, a 29-year-old plumber from North London who had been following Arsenal since he was 7 years old. His father had taken him to his first match at Highbury, and from that moment football became his life. Billy wore his lucky red scarf, the same one he'd had for 15 years, and his voice was already hoarse from 90 minutes of non-stop singing at the Emirates Stadium. Walking beside him were his best mates from childhood. There was Dave, a delivery driver who never missed a home game, and Tony, a teacher who spent most of his salary on season tickets. Behind them, a group of younger fans joined in, their faces painted red and white, still in disbelief about the magnificent performance they had just witnessed. "Did you see that second goal?" Billy shouted over the noise of the crowd. "Absolutely brilliant. Right into the top corner." The group erupted in cheers again, replaying every moment of the match in their minds. Strangers high-fived them on the street. Car horns honked in celebration, and even the London buses seemed to move with more energy. As they walked through the city center, someone suggested heading to Buckingham Palace. "Come on, let's get some photos by the palace," Dave called out. "We'll show the world that North London is red." The idea caught on quickly, and soon about 20 Arsenal fans were making their way toward the famous royal residence. The palace grounds were busy with the usual weekend tourists, families with cameras, tour groups following guides with colorful umbrellas, and street performers entertaining children. But today, there was something different in the air. The Red Army of Arsenal supporters brought an extra energy that made even the tourists smile and take pictures. Standing guard at one of the main gates was a young soldier in his early 20s. His name was Tommy Wilson, though none of the approaching fans knew this. He stood perfectly still in his traditional red tunic and tall black bearskin hat, his rifle held firmly at his side. His polished black boots reflected the afternoon sun, and his white gloves were spotless. What the celebrating Arsenal fans didn't know was that underneath that serious, professional exterior stood one of their own. Tommy had grown up just 3 miles from the Emirates Stadium, in a small flat with his mother and younger sister. His bedroom walls had been covered with Arsenal posters, and he had dreamed of playing for the club since he could walk. Tommy's father had left when he was young, but his uncle had stepped in as a father figure. Every other Saturday, Uncle Pete would take Tommy to watch Arsenal play. They would stand in the cheaper seats eating meat pies and singing songs that Tommy learned by heart before he could even read properly. When Tommy turned 18, he made a difficult decision. His family didn't have money for university, and he wanted to serve his country while earning a steady income. He joined the British Army and worked his way up to become one of the elite Queen's Guards. It was an honor that made his mother proud, but it also meant missing most Arsenal matches during his duty periods. Today was supposed to be his day off, but another guard had called in sick, so Tommy volunteered to cover the shift. He had listened to the Derby match on his phone's radio app during his break, celebrating silently in the guardhouse when Arsenal scored their goals. Now, as he stood at attention, he could hear the distant sounds of celebration getting closer. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, wearing the red uniform of the Queen's Guard, while his beloved Arsenal had just won wearing their own red jerseys. In his mind, he was still replaying the goals he had heard described on the radio. The commentator's excited voice echoed in his head as he maintained his rigid military posture. Tommy could see the group of Arsenal fans approaching in his peripheral vision, though his training required him to keep his eyes focused straight ahead. Their songs grew louder as they got closer, and he recognized every chant. These were the same songs he had sung thousands of times, first as a child holding his uncle's hand, and later as a teenager saving every penny to buy tickets. The tourists around the palace gates began to notice the approaching celebration. Children pointed at the colorful group, and parents pulled out their phones to record the joyful scene. The contrast was striking: the serious, silent guard in his formal red uniform and the boisterous, happy fans in their casual red jerseys. Billy and his friends reached the palace gates still singing and laughing. They posed for photos in front of the famous building, their arms around each other's shoulders, their faces beaming with pride. The victory over Tottenham felt even sweeter now, surrounded by the grandeur of one of London's most famous landmarks. "Look at this place," Tony said, spinning around with his arms outstretched. "Even the palace looks better when Arsenal wins." The group laughed and more photos were taken. Tourists from other countries watched with amused curiosity, probably wondering what all the excitement was about. As Billy looked around for the perfect photo opportunity, his eyes fell on the motionless guard standing just a few meters away. The young soldier stood like a statue, completely unaware of the celebration happening around him. Or so it seemed. Billy's mischievous grin grew wider as an idea formed in his mind. "Boys," he called to his friends, pointing toward Tommy. "Look who's wearing the right colors today." The group turned to look at the guard, and Billy's comment sparked a wave of laughter. "That's a proper Arsenal red if I ever saw one." Dave joined in immediately. "Maybe he's one of us and doesn't even know it." More laughter followed, and the group began to gather closer to the guard's position. Other Arsenal fans in the area heard the commotion and started to drift over, curious about what was happening. Tommy, maintaining his military discipline, kept his eyes forward and his expression neutral. But inside his heart was racing. Not from nervousness. His training had prepared him for much worse than some playful football fans. No, his heart was racing because he was about to be surrounded by his fellow Arsenal supporters, and he couldn't join in their celebration. The stage was set for something that none of them could have predicted. A group of joyful fans, a solitary guard with a secret, and the beautiful unpredictability of football bringing people together in the most unexpected ways. What started as a simple photo opportunity was about to become something much more meaningful. Billy's comment about the guard wearing Arsenal colors had sparked something in the group. What started as a casual observation quickly turned into a playful challenge. The victory over Tottenham had filled them with confidence and good humor, and the sight of someone in red, even if it was a Royal Guards uniform, seemed like perfect timing. "Oi, mate," Billy called out toward Tommy, his voice carrying the friendly tone of someone who had spent years bantering with fellow fans. "You picked the perfect day to wear red." The group behind him chuckled, and Billy felt encouraged to continue. "Arsenal just smashed Tottenham 3-1. You should be celebrating with us." Tommy remained perfectly still, his military training kicking in automatically. He had been through months of preparation for exactly this kind of situation. Tourists and visitors often tried to get reactions from the Queen's Guards, and the protocol was simple. Maintain position, keep eyes forward, show no emotion. But this felt different. These weren't just random tourists trying to get a funny video. These were his people, his tribe, celebrating his team. Dave stepped forward, emboldened by Billy's lead. "Come on, you must have heard about the match. The whole city's talking about it." He gestured toward the other Arsenal fans who were now gathering around. "Look at all this red. It's like the universe is telling you something." More Arsenal supporters had noticed the commotion and were drifting over from different parts of the palace grounds. What had started as a group of about 20 fans was quickly growing. Word was spreading through the crowd that some Arsenal supporters were having fun with one of the guards, and curiosity was bringing more people over to see what was happening. Tony, the teacher in the group, tried a different approach. "Seriously though, mate, that uniform looks brilliant today. Red's definitely the color of winners." He turned to the growing crowd. "What do you think, everyone? Should we teach our friend here some Arsenal songs?" The suggestion was met with enthusiastic cheers. Someone in the crowd started humming the tune to "We Are Arsenal," and others quickly joined in. The melody grew stronger as more voices added to it, creating an impromptu performance right there in front of Buckingham Palace. Tommy's jaw tightened slightly, the only sign that he was fighting an internal battle. The songs were so familiar, so much a part of his identity that staying silent felt almost painful. He knew every word, every rhythm, every pause. In his mind, he was singing along, but his body remained statue still. A teenage fan with an Arsenal flag wrapped around his shoulders like a cape approached the group. "Has he moved at all?" he asked excitedly. "My dad told me these guards never break character, no matter what happens." Billy saw an opportunity to escalate the friendly challenge. "Well, let's see about that." He pulled his lucky red scarf from around his neck, the same scarf that had been to hundreds of matches, that had absorbed years of sweat, tears, and celebration. This scarf has seen Arsenal win cups, beat rivals, and make grown men cry with joy. Surely it can get a reaction from our silent friend here. The crowd pressed closer as Billy held up his scarf like a matador's cape. Phones came out from pockets and bags as people sensed that something entertaining was about to happen. In the age of social media, everyone wanted to capture the moment when the stoic guard might finally crack. This scarf was at Wembley when we won the FA Cup, Billy announced to the crowd, waving it gently in front of Tommy. It was there when we beat Chelsea, when we beat Manchester City, when we beat... He paused for dramatic effect. When we beat Tottenham today, the crowd roared with approval. Even some non-Arsenal fans in the area were getting caught up in the energy. Tourists who had come to see the changing of the guard were now witnessing something far more entertaining. A good-natured battle of wills between passionate football fans and an unbreakable soldier. Dave joined, Billy at the front, pulling out his phone to record. "This is going straight on social media," he announced. "Arsenal fans versus the Queen's Guard. Let's see who blinks first." The crowd laughed and cheered, with more phones appearing to capture different angles of the scene. Tommy could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on him, could hear the excitement building in the crowd. Part of him wanted to smile, wanted to join in the celebration, wanted to tell them about the goal he had celebrated silently in the guardhouse just hours earlier. But another part of him, the professional soldier, knew that his duty was bigger than football, bigger than personal desires. A middle-aged woman with an Arsenal shirt peeked over the crowd. "My husband's been supporting Arsenal for 40 years, she called out. "He says if you're wearing red today, you're one of us, whether you like it or not." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Billy was warming to his role as the ringleader. "Tell you what, mate," he said, addressing Tommy directly. "Just give us one little nod if you heard about the match. Just one tiny movement to show you're human under all that fancy uniform." The challenge hung in the air like a football suspended at the peak of its arc, waiting to see where it would land. The crowd fell slightly quieter, everyone straining to see if there would be any reaction at all from the motionless guard. Tommy's training had prepared him for many situations, but standing perfectly still while surrounded by celebrating fans of his own team was testing his limits in a way he had never expected. Every instinct told him to join in, to share in the joy, to reveal that he was as passionate about Arsenal as any of them. But his duty as a Queen's Guard demanded absolute professionalism. The tension was building, but it was good-natured tension. This wasn't aggressive or disrespectful. It was the kind of playful challenge that football fans understood. They weren't trying to humiliate the guard. They were trying to include him in their celebration, to find the human being underneath the uniform. "Come on, everyone," Billy called out to the crowd. "Let's show our silent friend here what real Arsenal spirit sounds like." He raised his scarf high in the air and the crowd responded immediately. The famous Arsenal chant, "North London Forever," began to echo around the palace gates, sung with the kind of passion that only comes from years of shared joy and heartbreak. Tommy closed his eyes for just a fraction of a second, so briefly that no one noticed. In that tiny moment, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of being surrounded by his fellow supporters, of hearing the songs that had shaped his childhood, of being so close to his community, yet unable to join them. The crowd continued to grow as word spread through the palace grounds. "There's something happening with the Arsenal fans and one of the guards," people whispered to each other. Soon there were almost 50 people gathered around, a mix of Arsenal supporters and curious tourists, all drawn by the unique spectacle unfolding before them. What none of them realized was that they were about to witness something that would change everything, a moment that would transform a simple bit of football banter into something much deeper and more meaningful. The stage was set for the unexpected, and Tommy Wilson was about to make a decision that would surprise everyone, including himself. The crowd around Tommy had grown to nearly 60 people, creating a red and white circle of Arsenal supporters mixed with curious tourists. What had started as innocent fun was beginning to feel like a proper event. Street vendors selling souvenirs had stopped to watch. Palace security officers were positioning themselves nearby, and even some London police officers had taken notice of the gathering. Billy was completely caught up in the moment. The combination of Arsenal's victory, the afternoon drinks with his mates, and the growing crowd's energy had turned him into an impromptu entertainer. He felt like he was representing every Arsenal fan who had ever wanted to share their passion with the world. Right then, Billy announced to the crowd, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had the audience's full attention. "Our friend here in the fancy red uniform hasn't said a word, hasn't moved a muscle, hasn't even blinked." The crowd laughed and cheered. "But we're Arsenal fans, aren't we? We never give up." The cheer that followed was loud enough to echo off the palace walls. Tommy could feel the vibrations of their voices, could sense the energy radiating from the crowd. His military training told him to ignore it all, to focus on a point in the distance and maintain his professional composure. But his heart was beating faster with each passing minute. Dave stepped forward with his phone still recording. "This is going to be legendary," he said to Billy. "Arsenal fans and the Queen's Guard, this is going viral for sure." The promise of internet fame seemed to energize Billy even more. "You know what?" Billy said, his eyes lighting up with a new idea. "I think our silent friend here needs to see some proper Arsenal passion up close." He began unwrapping his scarf from around his neck, the same red scarf that had been his companion through years of football matches. The crowd sensed that something big was about to happen. Phones were raised higher, people pressed closer, and a hush of anticipation fell over the group. Even the tourists who didn't understand football could feel that this moment was building toward something significant. Tommy watched in his peripheral vision as Billy approached with the scarf. Every muscle in his body remained disciplined and still, but his mind was racing. He had been trained for crowd control, for dealing with aggressive protesters, for maintaining dignity under pressure. But he had never been trained for being surrounded by his own people, his own community, celebrating his own team. "This scarf," Billy announced dramatically, holding it up for everyone to see, "has been to more Arsenal matches than most people have had hot dinners." The crowd laughed appreciatively. "It's seen us win, it's seen us lose, it's seen us cry with joy and frustration. It's proper Arsenal DNA, this is." Billy moved closer to Tommy, close enough that the guard could smell the familiar scent of the scarf, a mixture of rain, sweat, beer, and the unique atmosphere of football stadiums. It was a smell that brought back memories of childhood, of standing with his uncle in the cold North London air, singing songs and believing in magic. "Just one little reaction," Billy coaxed, waving the scarf gently near Tommy's face. "Just show us you're human under all that uniform. We're not asking you to break any rules. Just let us know you can hear us." The crowd joined in with encouragement. "Come on," someone shouted. "We're all friends here." Another voice called out, "North London forever," and the chant was picked up by others in the crowd. Tommy's breathing remained steady and controlled, but inside he was fighting the biggest battle of his military career. Not against an enemy, not against fear or danger, but against his own identity. How do you stay silent when surrounded by people singing the songs of your childhood? How do you remain motionless when every instinct tells you to join in the celebration? Billy, encouraged by the crowd's support, decided to take his efforts to the next level. "You know what, mate?" he said, addressing Tommy directly. "I'm going to tell you about every goal from today's match. And if you're really one of us under that uniform, you'll know I'm getting every detail right." The suggestion was met with enthusiastic approval from the Arsenal fans in the crowd. Someone shouted, "Tell him about the second goal." Another voice added, "Don't forget the celebration." Billy grinned widely, relishing his role as the storyteller. First goal came in the 23rd minute, Billy began, his voice taking on the rhythm of a football commentator. Beautiful cross from the right wing, perfect header into the bottom corner. The keeper didn't have a chance. The Arsenal fans in the crowd cheered as they relived the moment. Tommy's eyes remained fixed straight ahead, but behind his professional mask, he was hanging on every word. He had heard these same goals described on the radio, had celebrated them silently in the guardhouse. Now he was hearing them again, told with the passion and detail that only comes from someone who was actually there. Second goal was even better, Billy continued, warming to his theme. "Brilliant team move, 7 passes ended with a strike from outside the box that flew into the top corner like a rocket." The crowd erupted again, some people reenacting the celebration they had done at the stadium. A teenage fan in the crowd couldn't contain himself. "And the keeper's face when it went in," he shouted. "Absolutely priceless." The laughter that followed was infectious, spreading even to the tourists who didn't fully understand what was happening, but could appreciate the joy in the moment. Billy was just getting started. "But the third goal," he said, pausing for dramatic effect. "The third goal was poetry in motion. He began describing the move in detail, his hands gesturing as he painted the picture of Arsenal's final goal against their rivals. Tommy found himself remembering not just today's match, but hundreds of other matches. The goal celebrations, the songs, the shared moments of pure joy with thousands of other Arsenal supporters. Standing here in his formal uniform, surrounded by people living those same emotions, felt like being separated from his own life by a wall of duty and protocol. The crowd was completely absorbed in Billy's storytelling. Phones continued recording, capturing not just the spectacle of fans trying to break a guard's composure, but the genuine passion and community that football creates. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a celebration of belonging, of shared identity, of the bonds that connect strangers through their love of the same team. As Billy finished describing the third goal, he stepped even closer to Tommy. The guard could now see his own reflection in Billy's eyes, could see the genuine excitement and joy that football brings to people's lives. It was like looking into a mirror that showed him who he used to be before duty and discipline became his primary identity. "So what do you say, mate?" Billy asked, his voice softer now but still audible to the crowd. "Any of that sound familiar to you? Any chance you're one of us under all that ceremony and tradition?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, like an invitation, like a test of everything Tommy believed about himself. The crowd waited in complete silence, everyone holding their breath to see if this moment would finally be the one that broke through the guard's professional exterior. Tommy stood at the crossroads of two worlds, the world of his duty as a soldier, and the world of his passion as a football fan. In a few seconds, he would make a decision that would surprise everyone present, including himself. The breaking point had been reached and something had to give. The silence that followed Billy's challenge was electric. 60 people stood frozen in anticipation. Phones held steady, breath collectively held. Even the pigeons seemed to pause their pecking at the palace grounds. The only sounds were the distant hum of London traffic and the gentle rustle of Arsenal scarves in the autumn breeze. Tommy stood like a statue, his eyes still fixed straight ahead, his posture perfect and unwavering, but something was shifting inside him. The passion that had been buried under months of military discipline was stirring, fighting to break free. The songs, the stories, the shared joy of his fellow supporters had awakened something that duty alone couldn't suppress. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Billy began to wonder if he had pushed too far, if maybe it was time to step back and let the guard return to his duties. Some people in the crowd started to shuffle their feet, thinking the show might be over. The moment felt suspended between success and disappointment. Then, without moving his head even a millimeter, without changing his rigid posture or breaking his professional stance, Tommy did something that nobody expected. His voice, barely above a whisper but perfectly clear in the silence, cut through the air like a knife. 3-1 to Arsenal. The effect was immediate and electric. Billy's jaw dropped open, his scarf nearly falling from his hands. The people closest to Tommy turned to each other with expressions of shock and delight. "Did he just—" someone whispered. "He spoke." Another person gasped, but Tommy wasn't finished. Still staring straight ahead, still maintaining his military bearing, he continued in that same quiet but audible voice. Second goal came in the 67th minute, not outside the box. Edge of the penalty area, left foot top right corner. Billy staggered backward, his mind struggling to process what was happening. The guard hadn't just spoken, he was correcting the details of the match. And he was right. Billy had gotten the timing and location slightly wrong in his excitement, but this silent soldier had the facts perfect. The crowd erupted in whispers and muted exclamations. "He knows the match." He was listening. "How does he know that?" People were turning to each other in amazement, trying to understand what they were witnessing. Tommy's voice continued, still maintaining his forward gaze, still speaking in a tone that only those closest could hear clearly. "Been following Arsenal since I was 6 years old. Uncle Pete used to take me to Highbury, then the Emirates. Block 12, Section A, seats 43 and 44. Billy felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. This wasn't just a guard who happened to know about football. This was someone with specific memories, specific seat numbers, specific connections to the club. His mind raced as he tried to understand the implications. "Season ticket holder for 8 years before I joined the Army," Tommy continued, his voice carrying just a hint of emotion now. "Missed today's match because Johnson called in sick and someone had to cover this shift." The revelation hit the crowd like a wave. This wasn't a stranger they had been playfully taunting. This wasn't someone outside their community looking in. This was one of them. This was a fellow Arsenal supporter who had been standing here in uniform, listening to them celebrate the very match he had wanted to attend himself. Dave, who had been recording everything on his phone, nearly dropped the device in shock. He's one of us, he said in disbelief. The camera captured his stunned expression perfectly, and the video that would later go viral showed the exact moment when entertainment turned into something much deeper. Tommy's military discipline was still holding his body in perfect position, but his voice was becoming slightly stronger, more emotional. That celebration you were doing earlier, the arms in the air, the jumping. We used to do that in the clock end when Thierry Henry scored. Learned it when I was 12. Billy's eyes filled with tears he hadn't expected. The scarf in his hand suddenly felt heavier, more meaningful. He wasn't holding just his own memories anymore. He was holding a connection to someone who had shared the same experiences, sung the same songs, felt the same heartbreak and joy. The first goal today, Tommy continued, his voice now carrying clear emotion despite his rigid posture. I listened to it on the radio in the guardhouse. When the commentator described the header hitting the net, I had to bite my lip to stop myself from celebrating out loud. A woman in the crowd started crying. Several people were wiping their eyes, moved by the unexpected humanity of the moment. This had started as a bit of fun, a playful challenge between fans and a guard. But it had become something beautiful, a reminder that passion and community can exist anywhere, even under the most formal circumstances. I know every song you were singing, Tommy said, his voice now audible to more of the crowd. North London forever, we are Arsenal, the one about never giving up. I've sung them thousands of times. My voice was probably hoarse after matches before you lot even started supporting the club. Billy stepped forward again, but this time with complete respect rather than playful challenge. Mate, he said softly, I had no idea. We had no idea. We thought we were just having a laugh with a guard, but I am just a guard, Tommy interrupted gently, still maintaining his position. I'm also a soldier, a son, a brother, and an Arsenal supporter who missed the biggest match of the season to serve his country. People are complicated like that. The crowd was completely silent now, absorbing the weight of what they were hearing. Phones were still recording, but the mood had shifted entirely. This was no longer about trying to break someone's composure. It was about recognizing the person behind the uniform. The third goal, Tommy said, his voice carrying a smile that his face couldn't show, the one that sealed the victory. I heard the crowds roar through the radio and I knew exactly what it meant. 3-1 to Arsenal. North London is red. Job done. Billy looked down at his scarf, then back at Tommy's rigid form. This scarf, he said quietly. Has it ever been to any of the same matches as you? Tommy was quiet for a moment, considering. FA Cup Final 2017. I was in section 135, row 22. My last match before basic training. Watched us lift the trophy and thought it might be the last time I'd see Arsenal play for years. I was there, Billy whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Section 134, just one section over. We were probably 50 meters apart, singing the same songs, feeling the same joy. The realization settled over the crowd like a blanket. They had come here as strangers having fun with a guard, but they were leaving as a community that had discovered one of their own in the most unexpected place. The artificial barrier between the formal soldier and the passionate fans had been dissolved by the simple truth of shared experience. Tommy's voice continued, strong and clear now. Every time I stand guard here, I think about Arsenal. Every time tourists try to make me laugh or react, I think about the matches I'm missing. And every time we win a big match like today, I celebrate on the inside while staying professional on the outside. The crowd began to understand that they were witnessing something special. Not just a guard breaking protocol, but a human being sharing his truth. They were seeing proof that passion transcends circumstances, that love for your team can survive any situation, and that community exists even when you can't see it. The moment that followed Tommy's revelation felt sacred. Billy stood there holding his scarf, tears streaming down his face as he fully understood what had just happened. They hadn't been teasing a stranger. They had been unknowingly excluding one of their own from a celebration that he had every right to share. I'm so sorry. Mate, Billy said, his voice breaking with genuine emotion. I had no idea. We never meant to. We didn't know you were one of us. He carefully folded his scarf and took a step back, showing the same respect he would give to any fellow Arsenal supporter. Tommy remained in his rigid military position, but his voice carried warmth and understanding. You weren't to know, and you weren't being disrespectful. You were just being Arsenal fans, passionate, loud, and wanting to share the joy. That's what we do. That's who we are. The crowd around them had grown completely quiet, understanding instinctively that they were witnessing something special. Dave, still recording on his phone, found himself wiping tears from his eyes while trying to keep the camera steady. This wasn't just content for social media anymore. This was a moment that would stay with everyone present for the rest of their lives. A middle-aged woman in an Arsenal shirt stepped forward from the crowd. "Son," she said gently to Tommy, "what's your name? We'd like to know who you are." "Private Tommy Wilson," he replied, still maintaining his forward gaze. "North London born and raised. Arsenal supporter since my uncle first took me to see them play Middlesbrough in 2003. We won 2-0 and I've been hooked ever since." Billy shook his head in amazement. "Tommy Wilson. We're never going to forget that name." He turned to address the crowd. "Everyone, we need to show some proper respect here. This man is serving his country and missing Arsenal matches to do it. The least we can do is give him the recognition he deserves." What happened next was completely spontaneous and utterly beautiful. Without any coordination or planning, Billy raised his scarf high in the air and began to sing. But this time it wasn't the playful, challenging chant from before. This time it was one of our own, the song Arsenal fans sing to honor players and supporters who truly belong to the club. "He's one of our own. He's one of our own," Billy sang, his voice strong and clear. "Tommy Wilson, he's one of our own." The entire crowd joined in immediately. 60 voices rose together in perfect harmony, singing not to tease or challenge but to welcome and honor. The sound echoed off the palace walls and carried across the grounds, drawing even more people to witness what was happening. Tommy's military training kept his posture perfect and his gaze forward, but everyone could see the emotion in his stance. His shoulders seemed less rigid, his breathing deeper. For the first time in months, he was being recognized not just as a soldier, but as a complete person with passions and loyalties beyond his duty. "This is incredible," Dave whispered to Tony, still filming. "This is going to change everything. When people see this video, they're going to understand that there's a person behind every uniform, a story behind every position." The song continued for several minutes, with different sections of the crowd adding harmonies and variations. Some people were crying openly now, moved by the unexpected beauty of the moment. Tourists who didn't understand the specific significance still felt the power of community and recognition flowing through the crowd. When the song finally ended, Billy stepped forward again. "Tommy," he said, "I want you to have this." He held out his lucky scarf, the same scarf that had been to hundreds of matches, that had absorbed years of emotion and memory. "This has been with me through thick and thin, through victories and defeats. But I think it belongs with someone who's made real sacrifices for something bigger than football." Tommy's voice was quiet but firm. "I can't accept that while I'm on duty, but I'll remember the offer. I'll remember all of this." "Then we'll remember for you," Billy replied. "And when your service is finished, when you can come back to the Emirates as just another Arsenal supporter, this scarf will be waiting for you." "That's a promise." The crowd erupted in applause. People were taking photos and videos, but now it was to preserve something beautiful, rather than to capture something amusing. The entire dynamic had shifted from entertainment to commemoration. Tony, the teacher in the group, spoke up. "Tommy, we want to do something for you. All of us here, we want to make sure you don't miss another Arsenal match if we can help it. When you get leave time, when you're off duty, you let us know. We'll make sure you get to games." "That's right," called out someone from the crowd. "Arsenal family takes care of Arsenal family." The cheer that followed was louder and more heartfelt than any of the earlier chanting. A young boy in the crowd, who had been watching everything with wide eyes, tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, why is everyone crying if Arsenal won?" His father bent down and whispered, "Because sometimes winning is about more than just football, son. Sometimes it's about finding out that you're not alone." Dave finally stopped recording and put his phone away. "Tommy," he called out, "this video is going to be seen by millions of people. Arsenal supporters all over the world are going to know your name. You're going to be famous for showing us what it really means to be loyal to your club." Tommy's response surprised everyone one more time. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to be a good soldier and a good Arsenal supporter. But if this video helps people understand that we're all just human beings trying to do our best while following our passions, then I'm glad it happened." The wisdom in his words settled over the crowd like a blessing. Here was someone who had maintained perfect discipline while being surrounded by everything he loved, who had shown grace under pressure, and who had taught them all something about dignity and respect. As the afternoon sun began to set, the crowd slowly started to disperse. But nobody left without approaching Tommy's position and saying a quiet thank you, or see you at the Emirates soon. Some left Arsenal badges and pins at the base of his post. Others promised to cheer extra loud at the next match in his honor. Billy was among the last to leave. He stood in front of Tommy for a long moment, holding his scarf and shaking his head in wonder. "You know what, Tommy? Today we thought we won because Arsenal beat Tottenham, but the real victory was meeting you and learning what it means to truly represent your club with honor. North London is red," Tommy replied quietly, using the famous Arsenal motto. "Always has been, always will be." "North London is red," Billy repeated, and the few remaining fans echoed the words like a prayer. As Billy and his friends finally walked away, they were different people than when they had arrived. They had come to the palace as celebrating football fans, but they were leaving as members of a community that had just grown stronger and more inclusive. They had learned that passion exists in the most unexpected places, that loyalty can be expressed in many different ways, and that sometimes the best way to honor your team is to honor the people who share your love for it. The video that Dave had recorded would indeed go viral, reaching millions of people around the world. But more importantly, it would serve as a reminder that behind every uniform, every role, every position in society, there's a human being with hopes, dreams, and passions that connect them to others in ways that transcend obvious differences. Tommy Wilson continued his guard duty that day with the same professionalism as always. But inside he carried the warmth of recognition, the joy of community, and the knowledge that when his service was complete, he would have a place waiting for him in the stands at the Emirates Stadium, surrounded by people who understood exactly who he was and what mattered to him. The transformation was complete. What had started as a simple bit of football banter had become a powerful lesson about humanity, respect, and the unexpected ways that passion can bring people together. Arsenal had won more than just a match that day. They had won a moment that would be remembered forever.